I lost $8,000 in a scam known as pig butchering. Unfortunately, this story is real, and I could have lost even more if I hadn't talked to my friends and carefully analyzed the entire situation from start to finish, including all the suspicious moments. In this video, I will explain how it happened, what lessons I learned, and why you should never trust strangers on the internet whom you have never met in real life. A pig butchering is a very sophisticated scam that is not easy to recognize at the early stages, even if you are familiar with IT technologies, work with cryptocurrencies, or are simply an experienced user who carefully checks and analyzes everything before making decisions. In my case, that wasn't enough, because not only money was involved, but the emotions too. The ideal target for this scam is a lonely person who is looking for a partner, has a job, above average savings, and an interest in investments. That is exactly what I fell for, and I paid a very high price. I lost my savings, a lot of nerves, and fell into despair. Unfortunately, relationships and the search for a partner turned out to be my weak spot. Maybe I'm too trusting, responsible, and I hate disappointing or hurting people. This scam is extremely cunning and cruel. Pig butchering is a massive global business where people lose hundreds or even thousands of dollars every single day around the world. The scheme is called pig butchering because the victim is the pig, which is slowly led into a circle of trust with a stranger. Later, the victim is introduced to a supposed way of earning money through a special cryptocurrency exchange, presented as a harmless opportunity to try something new and make a little profit. This happens very subtly. The victim usually starts with small investments and suspects nothing. Over time, persuasion and psychological pressure increase, and the victim invests more and more money but receives nothing in return. Most often, the story ends when the victim tries to withdraw their so-called earnings, and the scammers demand even more money under various excuses, like taxes, insurance, transaction fees, and so on. And then they simply disappear, effectively slaughtering the pig. It usually starts when someone contacts you through a messenger, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Telegram, or dating apps. In my case, it started on Instagram. Nothing seemed suspicious. It was a simple message showing interest in my content and profile. The conversation began with basic topics, where we live, our names, music, movies, interests, and so on. Later she suggested moving the conversation to WhatsApp, explaining that she had many work chats and needed to see notifications more clearly. By the way, scammers love WhatsApp because of the end-to-end encryption, and losing an account is not a big deal for them. The girl who contacted me stayed in touch constantly. She shared photos, showed her luxurious lifestyle, expensive purchases, talked about her hobbies and work. This was a real person with a real profile. All the photos, reels, stories were definitely not from a fake account. It was impossible to find the flaws. The photos were original, not AI generated, and not stolen from popular bloggers. I personally verified this using third-party reverse image services. She openly shared her personal story, that she had been in a relationship that ended, that she lived in another country and planned to move. Coincidentally, she said she planned to move to my country to open a wedding salon and needed time to settle legal matters. As a proof, she even sent sketches of wedding dress designs. Nothing seemed strange at the time, and she also mentioned that she had relatives in my country. That seemed plausible, so I didn't pay much attention. After a few days, once trust was established, the conversation gradually shifted toward work and passive income. She mentioned that she used cryptocurrency to send money to her parents in Russia, which naturally led to discussions about exchanges, investments, and crypto in general. Since I had studied the topic before and even tried GPU mining, she showed strong interest in continuing the conversation. Later, she mentioned her uncle from Switzerland, let's call him Alex, who worked in finance and was a successful analyst with many years of experience. She suggested introducing me to him as a friend of the family.
Well, I'll try to set it up to work with you to present you in a good light to it. And then, of course, we'll have to go from its response. If it's yes, then great. If not, then not. It'll turn out as it will. For me, it'll certainly be no trouble at all, so don't worry.
At that point, we had already been talking for several weeks and everything seemed positive. I reluctantly agreed, planning to start with a small amount up to $500 just out of curiosity. Alex agreed to a meeting. She even sent screenshots of her chat with him as a confirmation. He suggested a Zoom call to discuss the upcoming strategy.
I work in Switzerland, in Zurich, as the chief analyst at GT Bank. That is, I do this professionally. Most of my partners are people who have their own investments, companies that invest from 1 million euros into accounts. I provide information, I trade as partners of the bank. I know Karina told me that you wanted to start with 200 to 500 euros.
During the call, he talked about his background and experience. The conversation also covered personal interests, work, friends, all designed to assess my financial situation while lowering my guard and building trust in an informal setting. The dialogue felt professional and productive, like a job interview. He spoke confidently, clearly knowing what he was talking about. Based on his voice and manner, he seemed like a serious, wealthy man over 40. The conditions were simple: don't share insider information with anyone, follow instructions on opening and closing trades, invest funds, and pay the analyst 20% of net profit for that assistance. Agreeing to this was my first major mistake. Curiosity later led to much larger investments. Alex casually hinted that $500 was too small for serious profits, but agreed to show me how the exchange worked. After the call, I received a magic link to a private exchange that required an invitation code. The platform looked professional, terms of service, user agreement, roadmap, no suspicions. Everything was there, well, except the license. The only red flag at the moment was that it didn't appear in Google or Bing search results. Alex explained that the exchange was private and used mainly by analysts for insider trading opportunities. After depositing the initial $500 into a wallet shown in my account, we started trading. For the clarity, the first trades were purely educational, designed to convince the victim that the exchange was legitimate and to demonstrate how it supposedly worked. The trades were opened on global currencies in small amounts at the opening price, then closed after some time to generate a symbolic profit. This convinced the victim that the trades were real, that profits were visible, the balance was growing, and excitement appeared, pushing them to invest larger amounts in order to become more successful and naturally not lose face in front of the analysts and the girl who had put in a good word for me. In reality, all these numbers were fake. Even the opening prices were manually adjusted so that the person would see higher profits in their favor than would ever exist on a real exchange. To avoid suspicion, the analyst explained that the opening price was averaged by the trading system, supposedly a real situation that can occur when a broker updates a futures contract. Given my limited knowledge in this area, that explanation satisfied me and I continued working. Of course, I raised the question of withdrawals early on, right after we completed the first small orders. I wanted to test withdrawing money to my own wallet, but unsurprisingly, the withdrawal request button was unavailable. The analyst confidently and convincingly explained that this was normal because the trading system was connected to the account and withdrawals would become available after all agreements were fulfilled, something along those lines. The next suspicious signal appeared when I simply wanted to change my account password. After submitting the request, I received a standard email with a confirmation link, but the email landed in spam and came not from the exchange itself, but from Google Firebase. At that moment, the detail didn't seem critical because the analyst said the exchange was still new and technical issues were possible. For those who don't know, Firebase is a platform for developing mobile and web applications with built-in tools like databases, analytics, and hosting. As for the girlfriend, we continued communicating every single day as if we had known each other for a long time. I was really charmed and I had no idea it was a trap. After my conversation with her uncle, she never once mentioned the exchange, never brought up finances and never hinted that I should invest more. We talked about everyday topics. She asked how my day was going and gave no reason to doubt that she wanted to see me as her boyfriend. It even escalated to more frequent voice messages, one video call, declarations of affection, and even more photos from her side. To further reinforce trust, she sometimes recorded voice messages with her friend to whom she told everything about me. This was indeed another real person who also appeared to be involved in the scam and lived a wealthy, glamorous life. All of this was done to eliminate any remaining doubts. After all, if she was so open and shared so much, it must be real, or so it seemed. One warning sign in her behavior was that she often sent a series of messages and then disappeared for several minutes or even hours, and her last seen status was hidden everywhere. She explained this by saying she was often disturbed by work, had her own projects, needed to run a business, deal with legal matters, and the social media was generally distracting, which is why all statuses were hidden. At that point, small doubts began to arise, but I tried to suppress them and search for justifications, convincing myself that everything was fine. Nothing seemed terribly wrong, and overall things between us still felt positive. Later on, another analyst replaced the uncle, let's call him Jack. Jack was the head of the financial department. He gave a detailed account of his background, claiming he worked with major banks, executed trades worth thousands and millions of dollars, and had extensive investment experience. Maybe he even personally sucked off Elon Musk and Warren Buffett, but I can't prove that. When I asked why he even needed me, if he already made so much money, he said it was his personal experiment and that as a friend of the family, he wanted to bring me out into the world.
So right now, you are more of an experiment for me. And of course, I want to bring this to a proper result, help you get on your feet, and one day have you shake my hand and say thank you very much. And naturally, when we start reaching significant volumes, I would like to receive my 20% so that it also brings me profit. That's how business relationships are built.
Jack very convincingly discussed a plan tailored to my finances and trading strategy. A trading system was also connected under his supervision, supposedly necessary for working with partners like me.
Right now, we need to combine the main capital and involve as many people as possible that you know who can provide a certain amount of money. I'm not talking only about $5,000 or $6,000, which we are currently short of. In order to get you on your feet and scale up to larger volumes, we naturally need more capital. So that you understand, by the end of the year, even with minimal investments, we should reach a level of more than $50,000. Let's say at least $70,000. This is entirely possible given the current market conditions and market volatility.
This super analyst also pushed me to invest larger sums, referring to an alleged sharp drop in stocks by the end of the year, including oil, followed by massive money injections into the market, which according to him would allow us to make significant profits in a very short time. He also confidently predicted a strong surge in WTI oil prices by the end of the year. Of course, that never happened, and real charts clearly show otherwise. Historical price dynamics confirm this as well. There was never any real possibility of oil growth, but later the trades appeared successful anyway because once again the opening prices were edited, fabricated and skillfully manipulated. Thanks to constant communication with the girl and the supposedly successful orders on the exchange, at first it felt like everything was progressing naturally. It all worked so convincingly that I took the bait and invested even larger sums. What fueled my emotions even more was the fact that the girl claimed she was about to wrap up all her affairs and move to my country as soon as possible. Naturally, this later turned out to be fake, and she kept delaying her visit under various excuses. Analyst Jack acted professionally and he knew how to apply pressure. Every time he contacted me, he reminded me that time was running out, deadlines were approaching, and that I needed to accumulate a certain amount of capital to fulfill the trading system requirements, and of course, continue opening and closing trades to avoid any violations. Under various pretexts, he managed to extract different sums of money from me through multiple transactions. What pushed me further was my emotional attachment to the girl who constantly supported me, talked to me every day, and with whom I supposedly shared common interests and life plans. I didn't want to disappoint her or ultimately lose her. Yes, I was probably desperate, hoping for a serious relationship. How naive I was. I simply fell in love with the conversation itself. At some point while making deposits, I noticed that the cryptocurrency wallet addresses in my account changed repeatedly. The analyst explained that the exchange was new and that funds were evenly distributed across the system. Of course, this was not true. The wallets were used to move money around and conceal transaction sources. Later, I studied crypto wallets more closely and discovered that these personal wallet addresses were not personal at all. Using Wallet Explorer, you can check any address and see all incoming and outgoing transactions. I saw deposits and withdrawals of completely different amounts, including $20, $64, $30, $100, and so on. These small transactions may have been used to divert suspicion. In fact, the presence of unknown third-party transactions was already a major red flag for me. Another signal was that after my deposits, the balance was not credited immediately. Sometimes it took several hours or nearly a full day. Since the wallets were shared rather than personal, there is a 100% probability that balances were manually drawn into the correct personal account. So after some time, my personal savings began to run out and more suspicions started to arise that something was wrong. Jack continued to stay positive, telling me that I was doing great, that I knew what I was doing, and generally supporting me in every possible way. Later, of course, the conversation turned to borrowing money from friends for the maximum possible amounts, with promises to return it in the near future with additional interest. Then came microloans and even the possibility of taking out loans from the local banks. This was justified by the claim that by the end of the year there would be mass profit, so it was necessary to raise capital to a certain amount. At first figures of $10,000 were mentioned and later 50,000. Jack assured me that all loans would be repaid early regardless of the bank's interest rates and that all debts would be returned on time. Of course, all of this turned out to be a complete lie, but more on that later. If I had taken out loans and fallen into debt, my life would probably have been over. Some people really cannot withstand this, lose everything and even end their lives. You can imagine my despair. It got to the point where I actually went from bank to bank and tried to open a credit account for at least a symbolic $2,000 just to reach the minimal required amount of 10 grand. I was as if under hypnosis by a stranger who was psychologically influencing me and trying to convince me that everything was exactly how it should be. However, none of my friends lent me any money and the banks didn't approve any loans because I am a temporary resident in the country. And thank God that everything turned out this way. Fate protected me from serious emotional and financial losses. If I had managed to borrow money and take out loans, I wouldn't have been able to repay them, and I would most likely have faced court proceedings and, at best, deportation. I informed my so-called analyst that I had allegedly been given a small amount of money as a loan, and therefore there would be no more large deposits from me. Even then I realized that I needed to preserve my remaining emergency fund. I really was unable to get a bank loan, and I even provided a confirming screenshots of the bank support response. Overall, I showed Jack the appearance that I was taking certain steps related to the exchange, but at that point I was already trying to delay them, stall time instead of mindlessly sending more and more money. To deflect suspicion and slightly shift the focus away from the exchange, Jack also shared a personal story with me and asked for help. Supposedly an acquaintance of his in my country of residence was planning to sell real estate, but he was too busy to handle the matter himself and asked me to look into all the conditions. Things like how long the entire apartment sale process would take, what documents were required, how much would need to be paid in commissions and taxes, and so on. Of course, this story turned out to be completely fabricated, and literally a week later no one ever mentioned it again. Once again, on the fake exchange, suspicious actions were noticeable and they became even more frequent with open trades. My orders were opened at one price, while the opening price shown in the table below was different. On one of the days I was even accidentally monitoring my active orders and saw that right in front of me these prices changed in my favor so that I would see even more profit displayed in green. All of these trades were of course fabricated to further persuade me. After that I developed a firm realization that I was being manipulated and had fallen into the hands of skilled scammers. I carefully studied how this scheme works, and all of my fears were confirmed. All the pieces fell into place. It was clear as day that it was time to end this game. And now the story began to reach its climax. This pig butchering scheme was nearing its completion. December arrived, the month when, according to Jack, we were supposed to close all trades, sum up the results, and withdraw the money, including calculations for the analyst commission for his help. The promises were grand, that everything would end soon, that everything would be fine, and we would continue working together. Despite not reaching the capital threshold of 50 grand, I was told that I was doing great, that everything was going smoothly, and we would soon withdraw the funds. That $20,000 on the balance was already an excellent result, and that the analyst was proud of such performance. We also discussed withdrawal amounts, for example, withdrawing 6k to 8k for personal needs and to repay so-called debts. After all, it was the end of the year, holidays were had, money needed to be returned, and so on. The surprise with the withdrawal didn't take long to arrive. Before withdrawing, I once again raised the issue of the withdrawal request button, which had been inactive throughout my entire use of the exchange. Jack, of course, suggested that it was just a bug and asked me to write to support about it. Their response was roughly as follows: the withdrawal button is unavailable because I hadn't fulfilled all the conditions and I needed to complete certain actions described in an email that had previously been sent from their side. It turned out that support had indeed sent me an email that I had missed. This magic email ended up in my spam folder, and I emphasize that it was sent on the weekend. At that time my fake balance in the personal account was 16k. Please remember this detail. The email stated the following: my balance has exceeded 20k, which was not true, and on their exchange the first level of so-called insurance protection was automatically activated. As a result, I was required to insure my capital and deposit $2,000 into a specific cryptocurrency insurance wallet, and to do this as quickly as possible. This was already an outright and blatant scam, in which I was supposed to pay something extra to remove limitations and withdraw my own money. No real exchange would ever ask for insurance payments, especially to an unknown crypto wallet. I also analyzed this wallet and saw third-party transactions there. Obviously they collect money from all victims into one place and then funnel it into different sources to make it harder to track. In any case, all the money I transferred is already lost and cannot be recovered. Perhaps I would have had some chance to seek justice if I lived in the US and could contact the FBI, but on an international level no one will deal with this. Unexpectedly, after that email from support, my exchange account became inactive. Supposedly I now had to undergo some kind of training in order to regain access to creating trades and later restore the ability to withdraw funds. The analyst of course told me that I should have consulted with him first, that he didn't know about this situation at all and basically faked all the emotions, saying that now instead of withdrawing funds I would have to deal with the insurance and pay for it before the end of the year. Even my statement that I no longer had any money didn't bother him. He wanted new incoming funds as soon as possible. Later threats and hints of consequences began to appear for him and for me, supposedly that this could all end in court, fines, loss of money on the balance and other nonsense. Jack persistently explained that he had spent several months working with me, that all of it was supposedly in vain, that now he would earn nothing, and that I had damaged his reputation in front of brokers and the entire system. Sure, of course. The whole internet believes you, and we all watch YouTube holding our fingers crossed. In short, this insurance became the final icing on the cake. Naturally, I had no intention of paying it, but I sent them a reply email with a screenshot of my fake transaction for $1,000. I edited the screenshot in Photoshop to make everything look credible. For the second part of the amount, out of curiosity, I asked the glamorous girl I knew. Of course, she didn't refuse to help and provided without any questions a screenshot of a successful transaction. It seemed to be from the Binance mobile app, though I'm not entirely sure. The screenshot looked extremely convincing. It showed me the exact and current time, the wallet address, the amount, and the transaction fee. Nevertheless, this amount was not credited to the wallet, which could be seen in the same Wallet Explorer. It was obvious that the transaction was fake and was later cancelled, but I didn't tell her that. Everything was already clear anyway, as clear as day. The most interesting part came later. I sent 2 screenshots of these transactions totaling $2,000 and support supposedly accepted them for processing. Of course, there were no actual payments, but later they reported that the transaction was not recognized by their so-called artificial intelligence due to payments coming from different sources. As a result, this fake amount was credited to my main fake account instead of my fake insurance wallet. My surprise and their audacity knew no bounds. Later, a third party contacted me, some kind of a manager via Viber, using a fake Swiss phone number, who politely reminded me that my fake transaction was unfortunately not very successful and needed to be repeated, but this time following the correct procedure. In other words, I was told to bluntly pay another $2,000, but do it properly this time, from my own wallet and in a single transaction. Of course, Jack was furious that I hadn't informed him again and claimed that this should never be done, paying from different wallets, and surprise surprise that this was exactly why the transaction didn't go through. Supposedly now he would have problems at the company and would have to sleep with a homeless man and touch his jingle bells for free. It is interesting how he himself didn't burst out laughing at the sheer absurdity of the whole situation. What difference does it make where the payments came from if I provided screenshots? And secondly, this wallet was supposedly mine and had been allocated exclusively for me. But in general, it was already obvious that all of this was a complete nonsense. There were no transactions, the screenshots were fake, yet the payment somehow went through time and space by magic. Later in the conversation with the analyst, I asked, since he was supposedly so rich and successful, couldn't he allocate this miserable $2,000 for me and deposit them according to the exchange rules, so that I could unblock my account, withdraw my money, and then return the same amount to him out of pocket? But no, of course, Jack began explaining that he declares all of his income, that he has no personal accounts, that he is a businessman and not a poor peasant like me, and that he doesn't do such things. No, never. From that moment on, all that remained was to stall for time in order to extract more information from them. They would not get any more money from me. Their entire scheme has been exposed perfectly, making it possible to record this video and collect enough evidence on all their wallets, contacts, website details and how it operates. Of course, this is unlikely to affect them directly, because all they need to do is change their personal information, switch domains and website names, redesign the site, replace wallets and continue operating. Unfortunately, nothing meaningful can be done about it. No one will deal with this, and due to the complexity of how cryptocurrencies work, tracking the entire transaction process is almost impossible. Even if I had fully complied with all their conditions, they would have inevitably found a new reason to delay the withdrawal of funds and would have continued persuading me to deposit even more money that had already long ended up in the hands of the scammers. As a rule, in addition to insurance, they also invent withdrawal taxes, transaction processing fees, and other nonsense. There are plenty of such stories on the internet, by the way. It is truly sad that many lonely people fall into this scheme and lose not only their money, but their entire life stability. Some in desperation even sell apartments, cars, and go into even deeper debt in hope of getting everything back. The losses people suffer are enormous and can reach close to 100 grand or even millions of dollars. There was also a widely publicized case in 2023 where the CEO of a major American bank fell for this scheme. He secretly transferred $47 million to scammers and received nothing in return. As a result, the bank went bankrupt and the victim himself was additionally found guilty of large-scale embezzlement. He is now serving a 24-year sentence in a US prison. So comparatively speaking, I got off lightly. Of course, it's very painful that I lost my money and my nerves, and that I didn't learn about the scheme at least a month earlier. Nevertheless, I learned an important lesson. Never trust strangers on the internet, especially if you have never met them in person, and especially if they ask for money or offer any form of earnings. What hurts me the most is not even the money itself, but the girl who all this time continued communicating with me as if nothing was wrong, motivating me toward financial achievements and telling beautiful stories about a wonderful successful life and our shared future. That turned out to be the most treacherous knife in the back. It is unlikely that she will learn anything from this, because in this scheme feelings do not matter, only dirty money does. Even if there were moments of genuine emotion somewhere along the way, their relationship is irreversibly ruined and there is no point in continuing it. We were in touch every single day. Every day there were words of support, compliments, updates, vivid voice messages, and all that sort of thing. This entire story lasted a little over 3 months, from October to the end of December, a full 3 months of uncertainty and false hope. This scheme could have lasted even longer if I hadn't started asking myself questions and sharing this situation with my friends. But apparently the scammers were planning to play along until the end of the year anyway, only to disappear abruptly afterward. It is good that I exited this scheme before they did. Usually it ends with the scammers themselves suddenly cutting off all contact, deleting chats, blocking victims in messengers, and disappearing with the money, figuratively butchering the pig both emotionally and financially. To summarize, I want to highlight several key criteria that can help identify the scheme in advance and stop in time. Never continue a conversation with someone who immediately starts talking about their life and sharing photos. If the contact also mentions coincidences or supposed family or regional connections to your country of residence, this is a red flag meant to gain your trust and strengthen emotional attachment. Never engage in any financial matters with strangers. Even if you already trust this person and feel some sympathy towards them, ignore any questions about money, income, or profits. This is all deception. Refuse immediately and if possible, stop communicating altogether. If a person starts talking about passive income, cryptocurrencies, exchanges, investments, or help from analysts, this is a major red flag. Quite often after your refusal, the scammer will push harder and suggest starting with small amounts. Logically, it's not profitable for them to continue communicating with you if you refuse and don't plan to send any money. If you've already moved to the next stage and ended up on an exchange, analyze the website, check the domain registration date, test the withdrawal button, find out when the site was created, identify the IP address and look for reviews and history about the platform. Compare its design with known scam cases. Make sure to check the crypto wallet address provided by the exchange. If it's not empty and shows other transactions, that's another major red flag. If you constantly receive messages or calls from different foreign phone numbers or accounts, that's also a red flag. No legitimate managers, legal departments, or security services operate this way. Do not invest any money. Curators will always support you, talk about profitable trades, emphasize urgency, and rush you to act in order to reach large profits as quickly as possible. If they also mention banks, borrowing money from friends, or microloans, this is an alarming red flag. Do not fall for negative reactions from the girl or provocations and threats from curators talking about fines, lawsuits, or consequences for you in your country of residence. This is a psychological pressure designed to create panic and disable critical thinking. They also cannot access or remotely block your financial assets. They simply have no legal leverage over you. They are scammers, they have no licenses, and they cannot go to court. If you have become a victim of such scheme, be sure to save all the letters, messages, take screenshots of the platform, keep contact details of the scammers and wallet addresses, and report them to the police, or at least file a report on a trusted website so others don't fall victim to the same or similar fake exchanges. So if you encounter this situation, take all necessary measures. Cut off communication, accept that it's not real, stop responding, and block them everywhere. That's basically it. Please share this video with your family and friends. They may currently be involved in or at risk of falling into this scam. Take care of yourselves and your money, and do not trust strangers. There is no such thing as easy money. Learned the hard way. Thank you for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't fall in love with text messages. Don't look for excuses. Assess situations soberly. Analyze everything and take care of yourselves. Have a nice day.